Beyond 3D.
Clint, how are you?
Good afternoon, good evening, hello, good morning.
Yeah, all of that stuff. It's been a weird week. Welcome to this edition of Beyond 3D. Hopefully everyone's doing well out there. I've been having interesting brain freezes going on this week, so, interesting.
I escaped the Matrix this week.
You did?
I did, you know I did.
Yes.
I dodged a bullet, didn't I?
Very good. You did indeed. We'll have to go over that at a later date, though. So, the Matrix, but it's an interesting analogy.
It is, because it had its tentacles around my throat, and it was, what's the word I'm looking for? It was singing me a sweet lullaby with a nice paycheck. And before I knew it, I was in deep.
That blue pill.
The blue pill was pushed down my throat, and I was told to enjoy it.
Indeed. Yeah. But then, how did you get to the red one?
I unplugged myself.
There you go. There you go. Well, folks, that's one of the things we all have to remember. We can fall back into the blue.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I'm living proof that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Happened to me. I mean, you know my awareness of where my life path has been headed.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I got jacked back into the Matrix when I wasn't looking.
It's interesting. I just said the blue pill and everything like that, and the first thing that popped into my mind now was one of my teachers said the color blue in and of itself in the body is inhibiting.
Mm-hmm.
Energy is the red color. That's the color of the energy.
There isn't a chakra color that's blue, is there?
The throat.
The throat.
Yeah.
So if that's inhibited,
can stifle creativity.
You can stifle your life too if it's a bit crushed.
Yes. But as far as red energy is concerned, that's in the base of the spine, the basic chakra, and that is life force.
What, speaking of life force, there's a couple of candidates in the States right now that are running out of theirs, aren't they?
It's really, really interesting insofar as, guys, if you didn't know, last week the state of Colorado was about to hold a primary for the Republican nomination. People that are in the Republican Party, are members of the Republican Party, get together and vote for who they want to be the Republican candidate for president.
Or their leader.
No, not the leader of the party, the one who's going to run for president. The RNC, the Republican National Committee, leads the party.
So they have a leader of the party, and then they have a candidate that they choose to
run for president.
See, I don't think many people would understand that. I'm glad that my ignorance to the subject has helped you clarify that.
Anyway, Ted Cruz and Donald Trump are running for the Republican nomination for president, but they are not the leaders of the RNC or the Republican National Committee.
And they're against each other for the same political party?
They're against each other in the same political party. They're running against each other to see who will be the nominee.
Okay.
Anyway, after that digression, what happened was Donald Trump was leading in the popular vote.
Yes.
One man, one vote, supposedly or allegedly. What happened was the Republican Party, who does not like the fact that he is leading, decided, how are we going to get around the fact that he could win all of these delegates in the state of Colorado? They said it's very simple. No primary in the state of Colorado. It's been canceled. We are rewarding the delegates, the 34 of them, to Ted Cruz.
Wow. So that pretty much cancels him out of the race, doesn't it?
It cancels him out of the race for Colorado. There's going to be one heck of a fight when it comes to the convention that's going to happen in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And the exact same thing is happening on the Democratic side of the aisle. As in, Bernie Sanders won the state of Wyoming, yet Hillary Clinton somehow got more delegates than he did out of it.
No way.
Yeah, but you know all about that anyway.
No way. Hey, I listened to an interview with Dr. Stephen Greer this week.
Okay.
And they asked him that question in regards to what's going on with the political arena right now. What's the underlying agenda? Would you like to listen to it?
I most certainly would.
This is an edited version of the original interview, but let's just play this little snippet and we'll get caught up.
Beyond 3D.
There's some really big events that are happening that have to do with the next big thing in disclosure and also bringing out these technologies. In fact, it'll be the biggest events and project that I've ever been involved with, and it is being launched as we speak. It's a multi-faceted strategy that has been in development for the last year or so, and we anticipate will be a New York Times bestseller that will have all the new information, the top secret military and intelligence witnesses, as well as deep research on the classified, so-called unacknowledged special access projects, USAPs, that are being run illegally that deal with the UFO and free energy subjects and ETs. And that book will be the definitive story on the subject that has ever been printed. At the same time, beginning in the next 7 days, we will launch a crowdfunding effort, because we already have in production a full-length feature film documentary that will focus, unlike Sirius, that dealt with a number of issues, it's going to be focusing purely on the unacknowledged special access project, and it is titled Unacknowledged, after the name Unacknowledged Special Access Project, which is the proper name used in military circles for deep black, illegal projects. And Unacknowledged is going to be the greatest expose on the subject ever done. And even in the last week or two, there have been 5 new C.I.A. Air Force Office of Special Investigation and other military whistleblowers, witnesses who have come forward just by me mentioning this through our network quietly over the last 30 days. So that will also then be accompanied by something we are planning, but we're investigating where we can do it, which would be a global concert event live for an entire day that will have some of the most renowned performers, musicians, actors present, and will be live streamed around the world. That will not only complement this expose, but it is our intention that during that event we will have an operational prototype for a free energy, quote unquote, over unity system. Now that's in planning. We're closing in on a number of these. We hope it can happen. Now this is all anticipated to be the crowdfunding campaign. Remember, Sirius was the most successful crowdfunded documentary in history, and it went to #1 on Netflix in the past year and has been seen by millions of people around the world. This we anticipate will be 100 times bigger. And although we're not wanting to do this with any studios, because ultimately they ruin everything. So we have a very large digital distribution group that is going to move this out globally. But we need partners in this. This is the first time I've talked in a public interview about these plans. And we will launch the public campaign that ends secrecy. I want to be clear about what we're doing. We are not doing a campaign to ask the government to end it. We are doing a campaign that will end it. And it will be a call for mass defections, like it's begun to happen in the last week or two, from the intelligence community, the corporate government contractors, and the military-related projects that deal with UFOs, and to have all of those come forward in a massive effort. But that would be much larger than the 2001 National Press Club event, which, by the way, was eventually seen by around 800 million people around the world. This is what we're planning to do. The concert event, this is something we're still doing an exploratory on, but anyone who has contacts to these sort of performers, and there are a lot of artists that are very interested in the subject, and we're reaching out to them. The good news is that if we have a commitment from a organizer of these types of events who has done events like this for raising awareness and for raising funds for good causes, where he has had 200,000 and 300,000 people participate live on site, and then, of course, millions more online. So this is what we're in the process of putting together. And so I'm very happy to be able to announce this on your show. If people go to our website, SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS Disclosure.com, they can sign up for free for our list and notices. And also, if you would like, once we announce this, you can put a link from your site to what we're doing. And it's going to be, 20-hour days for 6 or 8 months to get this done. We're hoping that we can launch this sometime in between the fall of this year and the winter of 2017. So this is something we're actually already in the project. We already have the beginnings of the team assembled, and we are assimilating more. And we have people scouring government corridors around the world for the evidence and the images and the whistleblowers that we want to appear in this event. And so the documentary will only be sort of the tip of the iceberg, and in the process of the entire campaign being loaded up all over the world and being shown all over the world will be this vast archive that we are putting together. And our intention is to do this in such a manner and with enough public support that we really don't need the mainstream media. We will absolutely overwhelm them. And also that it will not be something where we're asking for the government to do anything, since the government never does anything on this issue. I mean, I've been briefing government people for 20 years. This is going to be where the people, which are really the government, allegedly, are the ones doing it, organizing it, and supporting it. So in other words, I think everyone listening needs to view this where, and you always people say, well, when is the government going to do X, Y, and Z? I said, well, when do they ever do anything? And it doesn't matter who the politician is or the political party. On these issues, they almost never do anything. So what we're saying is that we're not going to be doing this to get them to do anything. This will be the end of the secrecy, the bringing out of the sciences and technologies, and the beginning of a whole new chapter in our history. A very large undertaking. I think we can do it. The elements that have come together in the last year are frankly amazing, and the people who are on board this team now to support it certainly have the capacity to do it. And we're really going to be turning to the public, not only for the funding support like we do with Sirius, but equally importantly, the network support. Because a lot of people don't understand. I had a man say to me, who I was meeting with over the last couple of days here in Washington, that he was put on to me by some folks who have been in government, and their first comment was, well, we really don't know why Dr. Greer isn't dead yet. I mean, it was a very scary, and I've had this said to me hundreds of times. Frankly, I know what's behind it. Look, first of all, let's back this up. I began briefing people like the C.I.A. director and the Clinton folks in 1993. So by 2002, the year after we did the Disclosure Project, John Podesta, who had been chief of staff before President Clinton, and then was the senior advisor to President Obama, who put together his entire cabinet, and now is chairman of Hillary Clinton's campaign committee, was openly talking about disclosure. And in fact, when he left the Obama White House, he tweeted that his greatest disappointment was not being able to effect disclosure on the UFO issue while he was in government. So we know, now this is no mystery, because one of a man who works with Mr. Podesta, I provided a very large briefing for Obama back shortly after he took office, the president took office. The Clintons, and first with their CIA director and then people close to them that I met with back in 93, 94, 95, and many people know that one of the friendly people inside the Rockefeller clan was Lawrence Rockefeller. And it has been, quite frankly, improperly called the Rockefeller Initiative. It was not. It was called Project Starlight. Google it. The Associated Press got did a lawsuit, and the Clinton Library opened up their files, and you will see Project Starlight. And that was an operation I founded back in the 1990s to provide this information to various people in the government at that time in the hopes that they would do the disclosure so we wouldn't have to. In other words, they would do their constitutional duty. They did not. And I was the architect of that Rockefeller collaboration. But Lawrence Rockefeller did not initiate that. That's something that we did. And with a number of other military and astronauts, KGB's people, and cosmonauts and what have you, back in the early and mid-1990s. So this is something that's been percolating in those circles for over 20 years now. We're talking 23 years. So it's now clear, they know that the game is up. And what we're moving into now, and they certainly are aware of what we're doing, is going to either, the government is going to be rendered irrelevant, or they're going to be meaningful again. And so I think that what you see with these sort of comments happening and sort of what they call in Washington a trial balloon going up is to see how that plays and what the reaction is both within covert circles and within the public. And that is normally done in advance of a very major initiative. But I would tell people the major initiative is what we, the people, are doing. And it needs to stay that way because, the only way these things happen is if the people lead, the leaders will follow. And this is, we have this all upside down, and people have this authoritarian view of the world, when in reality, the people really have the power if they'll use it. And that if is an enormous if. In the absence of the people doing it, then you either have passivity, nothing gets done, or you have this kind of corruption within the covert programs that steps into that vacuum. And I've always said, power abhors a vacuum. If there's a vacuum, if there's a space there, these sort of folks are going to step into it. So it's really our responsibility, those of us who are citizens of not just America, but of the earth.
Beyond 3D.
To fix this huge problem and to get it rectified and not be, in a sense, codependent on these political folks. Now, with that said, we certainly welcome the political establishment to the extent that they would do anything beneficial to get involved. But their getting involved is really a reaction to what is happening with the body politic and also with these sort of initiatives, as opposed to them sort of taking a leadership role on it. And so there's an interplay here, and it's sort of a self-reinforcing system if we continue that process. But it's our intention not to be at all dependent on the government doing anything. It's our intention to do this in such a way that it is a dispositive event that reaches the largest number of people on Earth ever, and clearly puts this issue in front of the world in a way that proves it, and also explains what's behind the secrecy. And see, this is the hardest part. Everyone acts like, well, there might be a secret, and there could be UFOs, but if it were, why would anyone keep it secret? Well, the why is really the big issue, and the why has to do with, let's forget the word UFO. That's just an acronym for a alternative energy and propulsion system that's pulling energy out of the zero-point energy field, has a gravity control component. And, those things aren't running around using diesel fuel, etc. So that's really the issue, is that not the sole reason for the secrecy, but believe me, when you're talking about bringing out technology that would completely replace the oil, gas, nuclear, solar, wind, all of it, and also the public utilities. Because let's look at how these technologies work. If you had a 35 kilowatt system that would run all the power needs of your house or your car, say a Tesla without the battery pack, then you do not need public utilities and transmission lines. So this is an enormous transformation of the planet that needed to happen beginning almost 100 years ago, should have been completed by the 1950s. And so we're at least 60 to 100 years in what I call the lost century, which is going to be a part of this movie and the book. It's the lost century of development and human development, conscious development, and environmental preservation, because we've stayed on the destructive fossil fuel, coal, and nuclear systems for way too long. So that's something that people have to understand, that if it was only a matter of there being intelligent life out there, that would be a challenge to perhaps a certain philosophical or theological sort of view. But we're talking about the fact that we have operational technologies in these unacknowledged special access projects, USAPs, that would completely liberate the world from what I call the Petra-Nazis and the earth-destroying technologies that in the 1800s or early 20th century were manageable. And now with 7.2 billion people using them all over China, India, Europe, everywhere, now we're running up against these, what I call the three huge red lines. And we need to talk about what these red lines are, because we've been pushing up against those red lines for some time now. They see, all these folks see the handwriting on the wall. I just spent the last 6 days with a man who's connected to all of the major oil producers in the Middle East and around Europe. And this person is 100% on our team now to bring these technologies forward, bring this information forward, and start a new civilization on Earth. You cannot, some of these things I can't go into too much deep, but you cannot believe the transformation that's happening at that level. And so I would say in the 23 years I've been involved, 26 years I've been involved with this. I founded C.I.A. in 1990. This by far is the most exciting and promising developments I have seen. The reason we did it, and the background on this is really interesting. If you look at our website and the connection to this event I did on the true story behind disclosure, it's a 4-hour seminar I did, and it was that we knew when we did it in 2001 that the government, because we had dealt with governments all over the world at very high levels, that they were completely broken and dysfunctional. That's why we did it. I'm working as an emergency doctor putting this thing together with no staff, virtually no funding, and yet it became one of the largest events in the history of the National Press Club, not just in the UFO subject. And the way that happened was the people, but we did it because we realized that it had to be done. So we knew that the process would be an ultra marathon, and now it's coming up into it's picking up sort of quantum leaps of momentum here in the last few months. But in terms of the intelligence community, I want to be careful what I'm saying here. And you have to understand that when I first briefed the C.I.A. director on this in December 1993, only about 30% of the people on the committee, the Joint Committee on Intelligence that deals with this, were all in favor of anything we were recommending, disclosure, bringing up the technologies, et cetera, and so forth. Now it's around 70%. Now, this is not to say that they're going to necessarily do it, because the 30% that are still opposed are, I use this word advisedly as a medical professional, sociopaths, and some of them are psychopaths. And one of the problems and the lesson that was learned from some of the people who are more, let's say, enlightened within that group is that when former CIA director Bill Colby in the mid-90s was going to transfer to us an operational zero-point energy device, which is free energy, and a substantial amount of seed funding so we could get it out to the world open source, completely without patent, without restrictions. The week he was going to meet with a member of my board, they found him floating down the Potomac River dead. Now, I mean, his son thinks he committed suicide. We know he didn't. In fact, his best friend, Bill Colby's best friend, the C.I.A. director under Ford, who had retired, met with me and said, we know what happened here, but we can never look back. We just have to go forward. So they made an example out of him. Now, that was 20 years ago or so, maybe a little more. And there are a lot of people. I mean, one of the problems with all the conspiracy theory people is they paint everything with one brush stroke. And it's much more complicated and nuanced than that. For example, there have been people saying, oh, well, Dr. Greer is a CIA agent or something because he was helping to advise Lawrence Rockefeller on what to do about this. But Lawrence Rockefeller wasn't David, his brother, who was Chase Manhattan Bank, which is, of course, the J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the biggest banking empires in the world. He was the philosopher in the family who wanted disclosure. So just because he was a Rockefeller didn't mean that he was wanting to keep things secret or part of some cabal. And this, so there's this kind of simplistic, to the point of not useful, conspiracy things that are out there. And the truth is that there are some really supportive people in the government, in the Pentagon. And one of the things I've said is I think the biggest and most supportive people that we have encountered are in the Pentagon and in the CIA, because they know how dangerous this rogue group is, and they are as frustrated as anyone listening on your show. So they're very friendly people to this, but they don't want to take the lead because they're in the system. I, on the other hand, am, a nobody. I'm an emergency doctor who got involved with this, and here we are. I have no official capacity. It doesn't mean that there's not vulnerability, and I accept that vulnerability, and so does my family. But the truth of the matter is, we have freedom to do anything that we want to do, as do these military whistleblowers, by the way. Because we established in 1997 and 98 and proved that these projects were illegal and unconstitutional, and therefore the national security oaths that people have signed are null and void. This is something that will be part of this campaign before the film comes out, before this global kickoff event, before the book comes out, because, and anyone listening needs to listen very carefully to this. We contacted every division of this government and governments in other countries like the UK and elsewhere, and established and can prove in a court of law that the people who were supposed to be managing and overseeing these unacknowledged special access projects, USAPs, were behaving outside legal and required oversight. Therefore, it's a criminal enterprise, and a criminal enterprise has no enforceability for any legal or other contract that they sign. So if someone is working at the Lockheed Skunk Works on this stuff, or at so-called Area 51, or at Dugway in Utah, or et cetera and so on, those folks need to understand they are under no obligation, legally, morally, or in any other way, to remain quiet, because the overseeing entity on this is itself an unconstitutional criminal endeavor. And they cannot break the law and then use the law to punish these folks. Now, where you people say, well, it might still be risky for them. I said it's only risky if they do it as a lone wolf. And this gets to how you really provide what I call strategic security. Tactical security is having a bodyguard. So what? Strategic security is you have millions of people aware of what you're doing in real time. And people say, why do you talk about things before you've actually done it? I talked about the disclosure project that we were doing for months before. And I said, because our first level, our real bodyguards are the masses of people knowing about it. Because if you do things secretively, you're playing on the field of these devils who run secret programs. If you do things openly, you have the support of the people, and it becomes very conspicuous if they do some shenanigans. This is also why, with these technologies, we're going to be launching a global, what's called an incubator fund, to provide the research and support for scientists all over the world that we're connecting with in the last few months, to be funded and to be live streamed, all their research and everything they do, if they're participating and being funded by the people. They have to provide everything without patents and without secrets. That means everyone on Earth will see the results of their research in real time. It's sort of like the software program called GitHub, which everyone laughed at, which is an open source coding, software coding program. And people say, well, nobody will do this because everybody wants to keep their code secret. In fact, what they found is that when people collaborate openly and transparently, problems that would take a year to solve can be solved in a month. And so this is the concept that both this film that's going to be crowdfunded, we need everyone's help, and the book, which will come out together at the same time, and then this huge kickoff event that is a global live event. All of that is going to be to support that program so that we put together the best people on Earth working together. And not only are their laboratories live streamed online, but all of their research findings, whenever they get a positive finding, that is released immediately to the public. No secrecy around it, no intellectual property, no patent. And the people I'm working with right now, some of whom are working with organizations that have assets into the hundreds of billions of dollars that are watching this, have gone from saying, no, we have to do everything secretively. It's like Apple, where, you have to, it's more secret than the National Security Agency, if you know what Apple is doing with their next iPhone. That is the opposite of that. And every single person who I've explained why we're doing the strategy this way, because it builds strategic security, it keeps it from being able to be seized by the government, and it gets it out to the people in an open source way immediately. Every single person I presented this to over the last few months has said, yes, you're absolutely right, and every other strategy has failed over the past 100 years. So that's what we're doing. And it's a very sophisticated strategy in the sense that it accounts for the fact that every time you have an inventor who comes across this sort of breakthrough, and they're doing it as an unknown lone wolf, or as someone trying to pursue a patent or keeping it secret, usually they're dead before anyone can find out what they've done, or it is confiscated, or some big corporation gets them involved in a legal entanglement, and it's tied up. If you don't learn from history, you're going to repeat it. And this is something people in the new and alternative energy field have got to understand. There are specific traps that are set out there in the system. So the system, we have to bypass the system. Just like we're bypassing the government system for disclosure, we're bypassing the intellectual property, venture capital, patent world on the technologies. And it is the only way it will happen. And the reason I say that confidently is that I have tracked hundreds of initiatives over the last 25 years. Every single one of them have vanished.
Beyond 3D.
So there you go.
Interesting indeed.
I started off that conversation talking about what's happening in the political arena in regards to Hillary, and then it spiraled out. And just listening to Dr. Stephen Greer there, it spiraled out into what's going on with the full disclosure.
But if you're talking with Stephen Greer or listening to Stephen Greer, you know you're going to get disclosure in there some way, shape, and form. So you have no. That's what he's there for. That's his whole life at this point in time.
It is, and he's making as much awareness to this as he possibly can. So stay tuned, because big things are going to be happening over the next, I'd say, probably 6 months in regards to that.
I'm looking forward to it, finally.
I know.
But as he said, disclosure, don't look for the politicals to tell you anything about disclosure. It'll just be there.
Hey, I happened to catch a rerun this week of Star Trek Darkness. What was it? What's that film?
The movie?
Yeah, Star Trek 2...
Was it J.J. Abrams' version?
Yes, yeah.
Then I wouldn't have watched it.
You haven't seen it?
No.
Okay, really interesting, because the opening scene happens on planet Nibiru.
Really?
Yeah, and I totally forgot about that.
Well, it's out on DVD. Maybe I should try to get a look at that, because I had a big thing against Abrams because he had, in my opinion, ruined the Star Trek universe.
I know you don't know this, but I actually gave you a copy of this film that we're talking about.
Well, then I better...
A couple of months ago.
Well, then I better look at my disc at home and see where it is and take a look at it, because it'd be interesting to see. But no, Abrams redeemed himself with the first Star Wars movie as far as I'm concerned, but with Star Trek, I'm looking forward to the new one that's coming out, because it actually looked very interesting, but the ones he did...
Why have you decided not to watch them?
Because he made them.
That's very close-minded of you.
Yes, it is.
You're not like that.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
When it comes to Star Trek, I can be very close-minded.
You need to be flexible.
No, sorry.
That's like saying I'm not watching any Star Wars films if George Lucas didn't make them. No. And that's just quite the opposite.
I suspended my disbelief.
You want to see every Star Wars film that George Lucas didn't make, not the ones he did make.
I'd like to read that. Well, when they make the Timothy Zahn books into movies, then talk to me. Until then, I can wait a little while longer. And the other one that's coming out new, that should be interesting, and we'll have to talk about this, because I saw the trailer for it a little earlier.
You're going to say? You're going to say Rogue One?
I saw the trailer for that as well, but that was not what I was going to say.
Okay.
I was going to say Doctor Strange.
I saw that yesterday.
Interesting looking.
The trailer.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Very interesting looking. An Inception kind of thing and all that kind. Oh, really looked interesting. That's right up our alley. So we're going to have to get into that a little bit down the track as well.
Sounds good. Anything else you want to cover this week?
No, not this week, but we will have an interesting guest coming up in a couple of weeks, and that guest will be talking to us about something near and dear to a lot of our hearts, and that's the music industry.
I thought you were going to say time travel.
Well, that too, but no, the music industry.
We've done that the last.
Let's make it a little mundane coming up in a couple of weeks.
Well, we did that the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, we did actually. We did. So, but Mark Devlin will be coming in, and he is a DJ. And he is a DJ that travels the world, Ibiza and all those kind of places. And he has learned a lot about the music industry, has written books on it, and he will have a visit with us, and we'll start talking about what's going on behind the scenes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I hope everybody has a great rest of their weekend and a fantastic week next week.
Indeed. And we will catch you next week for another edition of Beyond 3D. 3D indeed.
3D.
Take care, guys.
3D?
3D.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.